What's going on, everybody? We have college football quarterfinals. We have a new year coming up. Happy New Year to everybody. Welcome to the SHIPIT Nation College Football Show. My name is Bill. Put a dollar in front of it. You'll find me on Discord and Twitter. And we have a big 3-game slate coming up. If you're here with me for the first time, hit like and subscribe down below. If you've already subscribed, I'm glad we have you as part of our community. But if you're not, why subscribe? Well, first of all, you'll be reminded every time this show comes on. You'll be reminded of all of our SHIPIT Nation shows. But second of all, we're pushing to 10,000, and right now we're at 9,200. Once we get to 10,000, we have some pretty big giveaways planned. So it's something you're going to want to be a part of. So help us get there, and we will return the favor because we enjoy bringing you free content here on YouTube. And the like and subscribe is really what allows us to be able to do that, and we very, very much appreciate it. But like I said, we have some pretty good contests on DraftKings this week. There's one, maybe the structure's not great, but 100,000 up first, 100,000 up top ain't bad. So we're going to get right into this slate and take a look at the stone. Texas and Arizona State. This is the Peach Bowl. Texas is a 12.5-point favorite, biggest favorite on the slate. They also have the highest team total on the slate. So this is something that we're going to keep in mind. On the Texas side, Isaiah Bond said he's good to go. It's hard to say how healthy he actually is. In the back half of the season, he really wasn't really involved. But at 4,500, he has the potential to be a number one receiver. It's just really a matter of, is he fully healthy? Is he just out there as a decoy? We're really not going to know until we get into it. And do they need him against Arizona State? You might say yes, the spread says maybe not. But even when he was in the back half of the season, Matthew Golden was having huge games. Gunnar Helm is always getting steady targets. Golden and DeAndre Moore have more spike game-ish to them. Helm is more of like the steady tight end. And it is a little easier to get to Arizona State through the air. So these are the guys I'm really looking at in the wide receiver room. Now, Ryan Wingo does have the potential. He is the cheapest one of the bunch. Of the top 5. And we've seen him have a couple of bigger target games. Just with Bond in there, even if it is just a decoy, it might limit the snaps Wingo has. So it's a tougher click. Again, you get the savings though. So on a team with a almost 32-point team total, you can really look at just about anybody who's going to be on the field. Speaking of people who are going to be on the field, Quinn Ewers back on the slate. You know how I feel about Quinn Ewers if you've watched any show at all this year. Even when he threw for 350 against Georgia, he still only had 16.5 fantasy points. So it's even if he's winning games and even if he's a good quarterback, which jury's still out, he's not been great for fantasy. He's only actually hit his value once all year. And when I say hit his value, that's 3 times his price. So in this case, he would need to hit 24. The likelihood of that happening, it's just tough, especially, Arch is still taking snaps every week. And it's not even necessarily that he's taking too many snaps away from him. It's just that it can throw off a quarterback's rhythm. So if you throw off the rhythm and it takes a few plays to get back into it, that's, 1 to 2 plays that we're not getting the opportunity for fantasy points. On a 3-game slate, he's not, I'm not going to X him out though. I'm not going to X him out, especially in this sort of game where if he does throw for 300 yards again, but 3 of them happen to be touchdowns, then he definitely has the potential to get there. Personally, I don't see it, but I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for trying. On the Arizona State side, let's talk about the running backs first. Actually, that's probably the most important part. Both Wisner and Blue had huge games last week. Been talking about it for the last few weeks. As you get later in the postseason, you start to see either more people get involved or usage get condensed. In this case, it's the more people getting involved in the backfield. Blue and Wisner were splitting earlier in the season. Wisner kind of took over the backfield. But it was I go back to the national championship last year. Donovan Edwards did hardly anything all season and then had the big game in the championship game. Jaden Blue hadn't done much for a few weeks, and then boom, he explodes last week. You can really go with either of these guys. You're getting the savings with Blue if you want to take a shot on him again. Arizona State should put up a better fight than Clemson did because it really doesn't take much. Clemson is not very good against the run. But I don't mind either of these running backs, especially if you're going to stack the Texas side. You could stack a running back and a couple of wide receivers, especially with Ewers' price and, his history as far as fantasy football goes. And I wouldn't mind it. If you do stack Ewers, I don't mind stacking him with one of these running backs too, because they do catch passes as well. On the Arizona State side, now we can go to the Sun Devils. Sam Levitt making the rounds a little bit this week. Over the weekend, he said he's been watching Quinn Ewers for a while now, and he wants to go out and prove why he's better than Quinn Ewers. And I would argue that he might be. He's $500 cheaper, so for fantasy, I like that. But he actually might be a better quarterback than Ewers. The jury, obviously, we have to wait and see how this game goes. But he's ready to prove it. Texas has really only faced maybe one great passer in Cade Klubnik. And Cade Klubnik is a dual threat. Sam Levitt is a dual threat. Now, I don't know that Levitt's going to go for 335 through the air like Klubnik did, but it does tell me that the potential is there. Why is the potential there? Because Texas is going to have to focus on stopping the run game. Cam Scatterbo, top 5 running back in the country. Now, it's a tough matchup. He's been doing it against the Big 12 all year. Only Florida was able to get more than 4 yards per carry against this. But you got to think if Arizona State's going to be in this game, that Cam Scatterbo is going to be a big reason why. So the focus on the run game, I do still like me some Scatterbo, especially if people are going to shy away at this price in a tough matchup, in a negative game script. It does make me like the pass game a little bit more too, because Levitt is not going to have all of the attention on him. Levitt can get you there with his legs. Levitt can throw the ball to Scatterbo, which is going to help him. And his wide receivers are all cheap. It's a very, very cheap stack to make. Jordan Tyson's still not going to be back. We did get a glimpse of what that looks like without Tyson in the Big 12 championship game. And what it looked like to me was that Xavier Guillory and Malquan Stovall got a lot of the attention. Now, they did only throw the ball 18 times, and you can't even really count one of them because one of them was Scatterbo throwing that complete duck that I thought Dillingham was going to SSPs watching from the sideline. So out of the 17, we'll call it 17 Levitt targets, 9 of them went to Guillory and Stovall, and obviously Guillory had the 2 touchdowns. Stovall had more catches and more yards, so the potential's there. Chimam Mateer still on the field at tight end. Troy Omie is kind of a dark horse. He had a ton of snaps. He just didn't get the targets, but he's 6'4", 220. So he's one of those big bodied receivers that might be able to be a little bit more physical with this Texas secondary. And Jake Smith is also a solid option if he can play. He was practicing ahead of the Big 12 championship game, but ultimately didn't go. The hamstring injury, so who knows? But one thing I will say, both Omie and Jake Smith spent time at Texas, so this is a little bit of a revenge game for them maybe, so something they can get up for. I don't mind this game stack. Arizona State has the lowest team total on the slate, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad option. If they can stay competitive, it's a very cheap way to then get whoever you want in the rest of your lineup. So if they keep it close, that could be something that gets you a little bit more leverage by stacking this game. Because I think the game everybody is going to stack is this one right here. Ohio State at Oregon, or at whatever, in the Rose Bowl. We've seen this before. I'm just going to start by going through some of the things we saw in the first game. Both quarterbacks threw for more than 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both teams had a 100-plus yard wide receiver that had a touchdown, and that was Jeremiah Smith and Evan Stewart. Both teams' next best receivers had at least 75 yards and a touchdown, Egbuka and Tez Johnson. There were 63 total points scored. It was a 1-point game. Now we have a 55.5-point team total and a 2.5-point spread. One thing that you'll notice, Ohio State is the favorite. As the number 1 team in the country, that seems like incredible bulletin board material. A little bit of disrespect for the Ducks at number 1. I will say Ohio State's been super hot lately, and the one thing Ohio State has going in its favor is that Oregon is not Michigan. So they do have a chance to win the football game. On the Ohio State side, Will Howard's a fair price for sure. We saw his upside just last week. We saw his upside against the same Oregon team earlier this year. He has hella good targets, or hella good options for the targets in Smith, Egbuka, and Tate. So, he's only $100 more than Quinn Ewers, and that's, one of those things that's taken me more to Howard, because we've seen the upside from Howard so much more often with the Buckeyes. And again, throwing in Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka as his targets only helps. One thing I will say, the big difference between this game and the last time they played each other, Carnell Tate seems to be getting more involved in this offense than he was earlier in the season. Now, obviously, last game, a little bit different story, but it still is these 3 guys at the top here, Smith, Egbuka, and Tate. You're getting the discount with Tate. That's because Smith and Egbuka are still just the 1 and 2 options. So you could stack with 1 or 2 of these guys with Howard, and I don't mind it. Trevion Henderson and Quinshawn Judkins. I mean, kind of the same story has been all week, all year. They eat into each other so much. Now, they both had 2 touchdowns last game, so that was awesome. But you take away those touchdowns, it still doesn't do much for me. And the other thing too, if you want to look at it, Henderson did have the better game against Oregon earlier in the season. Again, not necessarily indicative of what's going to happen here, but I'd just much rather have the passing game. Then if you want to look at a guy like Giescott, I personally would try to find the money for Tate or maybe go to one of those Arizona State pass catchers. But again, a lower owned option in all likelihood. On the Oregon side, again, if you're stacking, Gabriel has several options in this wide receiver room. I mean, he's a Big Ten Player of the Year. He picked apart this defense the first time around. Now he has more of a full wide receiver core to throw to. If you remember, Holden missed a big part of that game because he spit on an Ohio State defender. Tez Johnson is now back to full health, and he had 12 targets in the conference championship game and 11 catches. So it seems like he was always the number one option. In his first game back, he didn't really get as much attention. Speaking of Trayshawn Holden, he is getting his routes again. He was back up to 34 routes and 5 targets in the conference championship, so his workload is fine. Evan Stewart is the guy who had the monster game against Ohio State, and he's had a couple of spike games, but he's also got a little Casper to him. You know, he kind of disappears from time to time. And then Terrence Ferguson still gets a steady dose. He's a red zone target at tight end. If you want to take a minimum price dart throw on Sadiq, he is at least on the field. That would be more of an MME play. But again, if you're stacking this game, don't be afraid to stack multiple receivers with Gabriel, 1 or 2. And then you could even do a quarterback, running back, wide receiver stack just because of how involved everybody is and where the usage is in the running back room. Jordan James, been one of the best running backs in the country all season, 20 carries in 3 of the last 5 games, double digit in every game except for 1. Nice thing about him, too, is they use him on the goal line, so you don't have to worry about him getting sniped like you do with some of these other running backs in the country. The thing is, Noah Whittington still gets plenty of run, too, and he's half the price. He had 15 carries in the conference championship. James had the much better game against Ohio State the first time around, so that is something that's pulling me his way. But what it comes down to for me is, how's the rest of my lineup built? Do I have room to get James? If not, I don't mind Whittington in this situation either. I think we're going to see a little bit more of a 2-headed attack, kind of like we did in the conference championship game. But again, if you're playing 150 lineups, I wouldn't be surprised to have 5 or maybe even 6 from this game alone in a couple of those lineups. I know it won some people big money the first time these two teams played, even in our community at SHIPIT Nation. So yeah, very stackable game, probably the most popular game on the slate, especially the first one being a blowout. And then this next one having such a low team total. Notre Dame and Georgia, just a 1-point spread, but it's only a 45-point game total. The biggest question for me on the Notre Dame side is how healthy is Jeremiah Love really? And he had the big run last week and that helped, but there was clearly something going on. He had that leg issue, and then again, he played, but was he healthy last week when he played? He actually got out carried by Jadarian Price, and Jadarian Price and Aeneas Williams both played more snaps than he did. Both of those two played 23 snaps, and Love only played 22. So it's going to make it a more difficult click. And the other thing too is Georgia's a tough matchup. I'd rather attack them through the air. So it's just a weird situation for this running back room. There's a lot of question marks. We'll be looking for news right up until this game starts, obviously. And it's the later game, so we may not know everything we need to know when the slate locks completely, but, we get the news out when we can. Riley Leonard, one of the most dangerous quarterbacks in the country for opposing defenses. However, Georgia's weakness, they're a lot more vulnerable against the pass. And Riley Leonard really hasn't had to throw the ball this year. I don't know. I mean, he can. He's only thrown for more than 200 yards 4 times all year, but you could argue it's because he didn't need to. There were a couple of games, I think, with his shoulder that he wasn't really able to, but he's been getting it done with his legs. It's just a matter of if he can do all of that with his legs against Georgia, especially if the running back room is depleted. But you know what? It's not out of the realm of possibility. And if he does have to throw a little bit more, he's got a lot of receivers to throw to now. There is still some variance in this receiver room with how spread out it is, but they're all cheap, and that's why. Jordan Faison did finally have a breakout game, not quite as early as we wanted it to be, but he had 7 catches on 9 targets the last game. No one else on the team had more than 3 targets. So, Bo Collins had been getting some love earlier in the year. Mitchell Evans and Jaden Greathouse are good pplayers. Like Jaden Thomas had the touchdown last week, so it's really hard to determine which one, but if you do think they're going to throw more, you're looking at Faison, you're looking at Collins. Mitchell Evans is a bigger target for red zone, so I don't mind this passing game against Georgia. Again, that's where they're usually more vulnerable. On the Georgia side, Gunnar Stockton's been the talk of the town. Can he get it done? Maybe in real life he can. I don't know what it looks like for fantasy. He was efficient against Texas, but in daily fantasy, we really don't care about efficiency if it doesn't mean if the fantasy points don't come along with it. So the one thing that he was mobile in high school. He was also a good passer in high school. And there's not a ton of film on him. So that is one downside for Notre Dame. So he might be able, they don't know if he's going to run more or pass more. It's just not something that anybody's really seen since he was in high school. So I don't mind taking a shot on him at 6,800, but it would not surprise me at all if they come out hot and Gunnar Stockton is hot early and then Notre Dame makes adjustments and he starts to slow down. One of those situations where maybe you see 15 fantasy points in the first quarter and a half, but then he ends the game with 19. It's fully in the realm of possibility, but at 6,800, if you want to go one cheap quarterback, I don't mind it. In the running back room, Notre Dame has a pretty good defense, but I think I'd rather attack them on the ground. They've been a little bit more vulnerable there throughout the season. So Trevor Etienne does look really nice at 6,000. If he can run on Texas, he can definitely run on Notre Dame. He also had his most targets since week 7 last week, or not last week, in the conference championship last game. And that could be due to the quarterback situation, but guess what? He's got the same quarterback here. So I don't mind some ETN. I love Nate Frazier as a player. I just don't know that he's going to get the work with ETN taking most of it. And then Cash Jones, he's cheap and he's on the field. Dwight Phillips is cheap and he's on the field. They don't get a ton of usage. They're just kind of out there to provide breathers, it seems like. As far as the wide receivers, it is a little bit tougher to predict. We got a small sample size. Last game, Arian Smith still had decent target numbers, but Lovett kind of fell off. Dylan Bell basically disappeared. The one thing that we don't know, though, is what is it going to look like with 2 weeks of preparation, Stockton knowing he's going to be the starter. Obviously, the coaching staff is good. Otherwise, Georgia wouldn't be where they are. So, they're going to scheme things up in a way that helps Stockton. And that could include these wide receivers. Lucky and Delp are tight ends who have some upside as well. If they don't want to take the attacks downfield, that could be better for dump offs to ETN, short routes from Lucky and Bell and Lovett and Delp, because Bell does work out of the backfield as well. So it's tough to say, but again, you're taking a shot on these guys in GPPs. They're the favorite team. And if Georgia does get an extra touchdown, it's a difference between 23 and 30 being one of the lower implied team totals on the slate to one of the highest. Again, on a 3-game slate, you got to get weird sometimes. So maybe stacking the lowest total and hoping that each team scores 6 more points than what they're projected is a way you can take down a GPP. But that's a look at this smaller but very, very big 3-game slate all at the same time. And this is, again, like I said, it's the Stone. And if you like the look of the Stone but want some more information, this is what our Stone at SHIPIT Nation looks like. If it's the first time you've seen it, it's not as overwhelming as it looks. We have a color code up here with the key, so you know what type of game we think it is. If we think a guy is consideration for cash, if he's got upside, or if he's just a GPP play. Team totals, spreads, pace, pass defense and rush defense of each team, how much they run and pass, and then the game time start, because you want everything in one place for your late swap plan if you need one. And then how many rushes per game, how many targets, it's all the information you need to know. And the only place to get the Stone, the best tool in fantasy sports, is at SHIPIT Nation, the best DFS site in the country. All access right now is just $699 for the entire year. It's if you compare prices, at SHIPIT Nation, we want you to pay for your contests, not your content. So we try to give you as much as we can for as low of a price as we possibly can. And this $699 for the entire year gives you NFL and college football, which are still going, by the way. We still have more slates to do for both college football and bowl season, and NFL. Regular season's almost done, but we still got the playoffs. PGA, which is about to start up. I'll talk more about that in a second. We got NBA and NHL in full swing, MMA and NASCAR, always heavy hitters. And then obviously MLB is not going on right now, but a ton of success in all of it. And again, that annual package for the entire year, just $6.99. And if you want our optimizer that's included with these sports here, it's just $300 more for the entire year. If you just want to try a single sport, we have football, which is technically single sport, but not a single sport because it's NFL and college football. We did discount it for the rest of the season. However, PGA is about to start up. So if that's your sport, that's where I would go if I were you. And I say that especially now because we have a promotion with the start of PGA season. We have $100 off with this code PGA 100 if you get an annual package. So that's either the PGA annual package or PGA annual with Shiptimizer. And on top of that, you get all access through Super Bowl 59. So guess what? It gets you through the end of football season if you want to dip your toe in the water for the playoffs and for bowl season, but you're really a golf guy. PGA 100 not only gets you the discount on the PGA packages, but it also gets you all access through the end of the football season. And if you haven't looked at our YouTube page yet, obviously you're watching this right now, but the Degenerate 75, the man who got me into PGA DFS, a 10-year veteran in the sport, is already doing shows. The most recent one that he did was how to win a PGA DFS. And he's got a bunch of other big names in the industry on that show with him. It's more than an hour of awesome content that covers classic daily fantasy golf, showdown, best ball, props. And honestly, think about it. If he's willing to give you that for free, think about what we're going to give you at the Nation if you join the community. So again, use that code PGA 100 and get everything that you need to prepare yourself for PGA DFS this season. We have the Century Tournament starting already this week. But always remember rule number one, college football is fun. Enjoy the process. Enjoy building your lineups. Enjoy watching these set of quarterfinal games. And hopefully, while you're watching, you see those lineups of yours climbing the leaderboards. And hopefully for me, I will see you up there. But till next time, peace out.